friends, a week before we had the vacation Bible camp. I was then reminded of another vacation class where the pastor was talking to the children and he explained to them about heaven and hell. After telling them about the nature of heaven and the hell, he asked, "How many of you would like to go to heaven? Please rise." And almost everyone did. Then he asked, "Is there anyone who wants to go to hell? Please stand up." And there was no response. After a few moments, one of the boys at the back stood up, and the pastor asked him, "Do you really want to go to hell?" The boy said, "Not exactly, but I felt bad for you because you are the only one standing up there," he said. Many years ago, a visiting priest walked into a beautiful church in Germany. As he knelt down, he noticed a large bronze tabernacle door. It was divided into 4 panels. The first panel showed 6 water jars representing the miracle at Cana, when Jesus changed water into wine. The second panel showed 5 loaves of bread, symbolizing the miracle at Capernaum, when Jesus multiplied the loaves for the hungry people. The third panel had 13 people at a table, and that represented the miracle at Jerusalem when Jesus transformed the bread and wine into his body and blood at the Last Supper. Finally, the fourth panel represented 3 people at a table, showing the miracle at Emmaus when Jesus manifested himself as the risen Lord to 2 of his disciples. Now, one might wonder why the artist picked for these particular miracles to be on the tabernacle door. It was because they told the beautiful story about the Eucharist. Some modern Christians might find the first miracle at Cana to be a stumbling block, but the first century Christians saw the miracle taking place before their eyes every year. Each summer, the grapevines drew water from the soil and changed into grape juice, which was then later fermented into wine. The important thing here is not how Jesus worked this miracle, but why he did it. And then we can also read in the gospel that besides saving the newly married couple from a social embarrassment because they were running short of wine, Jesus did it to prepare the people when he would change the same wine into the sacrament of his own blood. Similarly, they saw another miracle taking place each year in the wheat field, when a bushel of grains sowed into the field, they grow up and produce many more bushels of wheat. Once again, the important thing here is not how Jesus performed this miracle, but why he did it. Besides feeding the hungry crowd with the loaves, Jesus also used to prepare the people, the same crowd, for the day when he would feed them in a spiritual way in the Eucharist. Therefore, according to that German artist, the Eucharist was already prefigured at the marriage feast. It was promised at the multiplication of the loaves, and then it was instituted at the Last Supper, and finally celebrated in Emmaus. In this way, we can recognize that the Eucharist is the only spiritual nourishment we have. Just as manna nourished the Israelites on their journey to the promised land, the Eucharist we celebrate together every time we come together is our journey to the promised land. This is the one that nourishes in our journey to heaven. It is also the reason the Eucharist makes the real presence of Christ in our midst, and that is why Jesus made the promise before he ascended to his Father in heaven. He told his disciples, I will be with you always till the end of the ages. Every time we come together to Mass, we receive the same Jesus who changed water into wine. It is the same Jesus who multiplied the loaves and fish to feed the hungry crowd. It is the same Jesus who changed the bread and wine or transformed them into his body and blood at the Last Supper, instituting the Holy Eucharist. According to one of the Christian writers and scholar, Father Mark Link, the difference between the bread of life and the ordinary bread is beyond comparison. When we eat the ordinary bread, it becomes part of us. It becomes part of our body. But when we eat the bread of life, it doesn't change into us. Rather, we change into the bread of life because it transforms us into the body of Christ. Dear friends, only a divine person like Jesus could have conceived of and given us such an incredible gift in our life. And so it's a personal, precious gift that the Lord continues to give us every time when we come together to celebrate the Eucharist with our community. Let's always remember the Eucharist is not just one-time event that Jesus instituted 2,000 years ago. Eucharist is a way of life by which we allow ourselves to be nourished by Jesus' body and blood, and that is why the Lord tells each one of us and to his disciples, whoever eats my body and drinks my blood will remain in me and I in them. Whoever eats this bread will live forever.